Welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Dr. Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, and joining me today is Angelo Glaviano, who is a polyglot.
Hi.
And he's from Italy, and he teaches French and Spanish and Italian here at the college. And I'm deliriously happy to have him here because it's also Valentine's Day today. The show will air a little later in the week. But when I think about Valentine's Day, I have to think about Romeo and Juliet. And they were an Italian couple, star-crossed lovers, as I recall.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit before the show started that Angelo is actually on the radio in Italy. So let's start there.
Yeah, well, I used to work on the radio many years ago as a DJ.
What kind of a radio program?
Well, it's like music radio, playing Italian music. And,
Italian rock and roll?
Yeah, absolutely. But most of it was like Italian music, like melodic music, romantic music, stuff like that. Valentine's Day, we get a lot of phone calls, obviously.
What kind of music would you request on Valentine's Day in Italy?
Italian music, I guess, is famous for romantic lyrics, and we have quite a few skilled singers. The latest one I can think of is Bocelli. He's very popular, very romantic. And or other Italian singers like Lucio Dalla, for example, other Italian singers.
Does Italy, you think about American pop music, the kind of the kind of emo. I suppose emo is probably as close as American music would come to that romantic side.
Well, American music also was famous in Italy. A lot of American singers are very famous in Italy. Either rap or reggae or, Italians are, I guess, like everybody, love music, and therefore there's a huge market for American singers. Many American singers go in Italy, like Bruce Springsteen, for example, is very popular. Touring, in Italy, go to Milan, go to Genoa, go to Venice, Florence, and so on, and have a huge... What's interesting, though, is Italians don't know English, really, so we have no idea what they're singing about. Not a clue. But even if we don't know, we just love the rhythm, the music, the sounds, the voice of the singer, and therefore that creates a huge amount of fans.
That's interesting because, it was a romance language. I mean, English is not a romance language.
Yes, it is.
All right. Tell me about it. I mean, it's also Anglo-Saxon, and
absolutely,
and it's corrupted by all the other influences in the melting pot. It is
actually 80% of English words derive from Latin indirectly.
I love Latin.
Well, did you ever watch that movie? Was it Braveheart?
I watched the first part of it, and then I had to stop watching it because it's pretty violent.
It was a little violent, yeah. But the reason why I'm mentioning it is because in the middle of the movie, the main character, he's talking in French with one of the royal family members. And the reason why he was talking to her in French was because at the time, like around the Middle Ages, the language spoken in the royal court was actually French. Normandy, for instance, that's where these people were coming from. With William the Conqueror, actually France is pretty much the only time England was ever invaded and conquered by a foreign power. The French are so proud of it, by the way. And therefore, the members of this new royal family spoke French. You have a huge number of French words introduced into the English language spoken at the time. So therefore, Latin words like very present in French. And when I first came here, for example, helped me in speeding up my learning process in learning English. For example, it was just because I spoke French. Since the French and English are very similar, especially if you were to read French, for example, you'll be able to understand way more than you would otherwise, by listening to it.
Right, and that's certainly been my experience. It's always easier because you can decode it.
Absolutely. So, and rather than taking any classes and all that, I pretty much was able to have a jump start in English by just knowing French.
We have to take a few breaks, and this is our first break, and we will come back. And welcome back. I'm Anna Wasesha, the president of Middlesex Community College, and I'm talking today with Angelo Glaviano. Today has to be Valentine's Day, but we're talking about language and culture, and maybe the language of love too. I mean, that takes us back to Romeo and Juliet.
It does.
It seems like Italian has a whole language of love element to it. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't want to be chauvinistic. I like to extend that to pretty much all Romance languages. But Italian, is like a language of choice in opera, for example, just because it sounds pretty, and therefore people would choose that as a romantic language as well. But French is not bad at all, by the way. I mean, that's my personal preference in the Romance languages.
Why are they called Romance languages?
Because of Rome.
Because of Rome.
Right.
And then, of course, we think of romance completely differently.
Right.
Which, of course, comes back to
But
Valentine's
in
Day.
Romania, the country, is called Romania because of Rome. And they're supposedly be speaking some kind of Romance language, although it's very different, just because of its geographical position compared to other Romance languages.
And Rome comes from Romulus and Remus, right? The twins?
Not too sure about that.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
So it goes back, I think, to a name.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that August and July come from
the
Julius
Roman
and,
emperors, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in class as well. We do, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we do all like this kind of stuff because I like to students, in an Italian class, for example, to know like the origin of the words, for example. And if I may interject very quickly, one word that usually has a major success in the students is the word to be. Mm-hmm. Everybody thinks that the word to be, for example, is such an English word. It's not. It's actually a very, very ancient word coming from the Sanskrit, which is this ancient language spoken like 1,000 years ago, somewhere between Iran and then India, in that area. And the word to be, it means actually to grow. So when you're being, you're actually growing, you're becoming. And that blows my mind away. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do in class. Besides the grammar and all the words and all that, we talk about these things as well. And students seem to have an appreciation for that because it's nice to, this modern era where the words that we use are pretty much standardized. To eventually get to talk about, what we used to say and why we used to say it, for example, and what it means and what it meant and so on.
Well, you obviously have learned a whole lot of different languages. Mm-hmm. What do you think about the American trend toward not learning foreign languages at all?
Whoa, that's a good question. I been in England, and I've been here. These are the only two English-speaking countries I've been, and comparing it to the English, for example, in England, I guess because like the population lives in this country, to me it seems like Americans are more forgiving in terms of the correctness, as long as you try.
Proper
as long as you try.
And so in England...
In England, there seem to be, there's social, at the time anyway, nowadays it may be different. But at the time, social composition in England was not as varied and flavorful as it is in the United States. And therefore, Americans are more exposed to, for example, terminology that derives from, for example, food, the different foods that foreigners bring here, different clothing, for example, games, and so on. And therefore, Americans have this exposure to foreign languages. And to me, I've noticed a major difference in the time I've been working here. I've been here almost 20 years, and I can tell that 20 years ago, Americans seemed to be more, uncertain about foreign languages. And nowadays, I notice it's totally dramatic different approach. There are still some people that resist the change or acknowledging the existence of the languages. But last night they were talking like how in some towns, like smaller towns in Connecticut, there are 40 languages spoken.
Sure.
And I think it was the town was nearby the casino, somewhere around the casino, like 40 languages spoken in this small town. So to me, Americans seem to be very receptive. Again, as long as you try, to say something, Americans are very, very helpful. Very helpful, understand.
Initially, when you learn a foreign language, it's frustrating because you want to express something, but you don't have the language to do it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's maybe hard to encourage people of any age to start to learn a new language.
Right. But the difference today is that once you leave the classroom, for example, you actually get to see what you learn in class in the local grocery store, at the local hospital, local market, farmers markets, and so on. At the time, what was learned in class would pretty much be confined within those walls.
Exactly.
So when the student gets out of the classroom and they go to some famous supermarket and they see like the produce sold in there is actually also in Spanish, for example, then they actually are able to figure out, well, there's a point actually in doing what I do in class. It's not obsolete anymore as it used to be, but they actually find the link with the true world, with the reality, and therefore the learning experience becomes more dynamic, it becomes more enjoyable, more purposeful. Really, really happy the way languages are being accepted nowadays in the country. And Americans, travel more than they used to travel, for example. The internet made a huge impact with languages.
I saw the most remarkable television story in the last week about a young woman who had graduated from Middlebury College, which is really well known for language instruction, and she had studied abroad in China. She majored in Chinese language. She now works for Voice of America, which is, that's a worldwide kind of thing. But on her own time, using her iBook, she's created a program called OMG, and then it's something like Megwo. Megwo Ren is American in the Chinese language, and it's Megwo something. And she goes on for an hour a day or so, and she teaches idiomatic slang, teenage, young person, American, to Chinese. And it's been so remarkably successful that she has a huge fan club in China. She went back to China, she met with her fan club. And the way she creates her lesson plans is that as part of her weekly session or her daily or how often she does this, she says, write to me and tell me what you want to learn about. And so they keep feeding back these different ideas. They used one example. Well, one was I have flabby arms, which you would never pick up in a language book, right? You don't find that I am, you are, he is, I have flabby arms. And another one was about puppy love. It's kind of an American idea.
It is.
Yeah. And I thought, this is so great because you want to be able to, truly be, to be fluent in a language, you have to understand colloquial language as well as the kind of book language.
Right. But at the same time, I think like Americans are joining in with the rest of the world. Yeah. For example, our neighbor in the north has been bilingual for many, many, many years, and happily so, I guess.
It hasn't done any damage.
Right. To look around the world, they got countries like Switzerland, for example, they speak 3 different languages within the same country.
Right. And
then Belgium, they speak 2, and so on. So this country, and also because it's your geographical position, isolated with these 2 major oceans, left and right, keeping it from, absorbing these languages from around the world. But now, because again, Americans are traveling more, the internet, the easiness with which we can communicate with the rest of the world, I think Americans are joining in, and especially newer generations.
I am being frustrated by the fact that we have to break this radio program into sections. If only we could have marathon shows. But we're going to have to take a break, and we will come right back and talk with Angelo Glaviano some more. This is Anna Wasesha, and the radio program is called Middlesex Moments Radio Show. I'm the president at Middlesex Community College, and we're talking today with Angelo Glaviano, who teaches Italian, Spanish, and French at college. There's so many things to talk about with language, but I don't want to let go of Romeo and Juliet.
Absolutely.
So what do Romeo and Juliet mean in Italian culture when people talk about it there?
Well, although it was not written by an Italian author.
Yes, it was not, of course, but it was really, set in Verona.
For Italians, that's a major discovery because Romeo and Juliet, have Italian names, Italian last names, and all that. So you figure like whoever wrote about this had to be Italian too. Italian city. As it turns out, it's not, and we wonder, how did that happen? Why don't we have our own version of these 2 guys? But they're very popular. They have this balcony in Verona, in the city of Verona, which is in the Venice area, and they are celebrated, incredibly so. They represent, love. It's a purest state. They represent the ideal of a relationship. Despite the hardship, despite the fact that the families did not like each other, or that the purity of their feelings was always there, regardless. And I think that's what makes their story so popular, so universal, such a universal message to the whole world. I mean, who doesn't know about Romeo and Juliet? I'm sure that from Russia to China to Vietnam to South Korea to Chile, they're known. And just because of that, because the message they're sending is such a pure message, the only, I guess, younger people can feel regardless of the difficulties, regardless of the compromises they have to make, and so on. So they're an inspiration. They have been for generations, like for quite a few centuries, we can say. And still they're there, very modern, regardless of their age. I wonder how old would they be nowadays? And they send out this incredible, powerful message that's received by the whole world, because all humans fall in love inevitably. And I guess if anybody would have to think of an ideal couple, that would be the first answer that anyone around the world would actually think of. No doubt about it.
I know. It is wonderful, and it is an iconic love story.
It is. I wonder whether we don't have more bumper stickers. Romeo and Juliet. I would have one on my bumper if I had a chance.
Did you ever visit the balcony in Verona?
Yes.
So describe it.
Well, Verona is this very quaint little city. It has this river that runs through the city. Buildings are very clean, and it's very quiet as a city. It's got this incredibly beautiful, well-kept Roman amphitheater, which is used during the summertime for live concerts.
And it's an ancient amphitheater.
It's an ancient. The same building used by the Romans for their own games is being used nowadays to host singers, theater. We don't do gladiator games anymore.
But that's remarkable. That's like 2,000 years old.
Well, we got quite a few examples of Roman architecture that's able to withstand the millennia, not just the centuries.
Right.
And still stands strong. It's still serving its original purpose, although everybody doesn't realize that the Romans did not build that structure to last this long. They didn't think, the engineers, we'll have to make sure that this thing is going to be lasting like 2,000 years. So let's build it this way. They didn't. It just happened that there was the way they used to build stuff. And therefore it's still there for everybody to enjoy. People are very welcoming. Their cuisine is not what people think of Italian cuisine. Very different.
In what
very
way?
Creamy, for example. You have like the white sauces. They use fish, for example, or they also use like game, like deer, for example, to eat. And one thing I noticed that was quite interesting in Verona was when young people get married, right after getting married, the couple walks down the streets
To present themselves
to their to the society, to their community as a married couple. That to me was like quite interesting. There was no limo, just the bride and the groom walking down the streets, dressed with the nice clothes and all that, and they just walking. I thought like they were going to church. Maybe they were late or something. Actually, they were coming out of church.
Well, is a honeymoon an American concept,
Not
or
at
are
all.
there are honeymoons
International.
ordinarily an Italian couple who gets married would go off on a honeymoon?
Mm-hmm. They're actually expected to. So, but Verona is a really, really nice city, and they have these beautiful palaces built at the time, built in stone on a brick. And there's this balcony, and surprisingly enough, it's not that big.
Sure.
I was imagining, I'm walking and I'm just about turning the corner where this balcony is, a famous balcony. It was my first time. So I'm imagining like this, something that matched the fame. and it's not. It's a small little balcony, and I thought, how would she fit in there? So it was kind of disappointing from that perspective. But again, I was thinking of the Colosseum, I guess.
Sure. So it's kind of larger things.
And therefore, it's incredibly beautiful. The city keeps the balcony, the whole palace, well. It's nicely kept up. And there's no major crowds. Again, it's a very quaint city. I would love to live there. And the little bridges, it's very romantic. And they have all these patios, these palaces, the local farmers market, where you can buy local produce and all that. And people seem to be very happy.
Is there a large town square?
Yes. It's not that large. It's a smaller city. It's not a large city. It's a smaller city. I think famous just because of Romeo and Juliet. I don't know otherwise would be famous.
There are so many beautiful Italian cities. What's your home city or town?
I'm from Sicily. My hometown is Patti. When I first came here, of course, everybody's from Melilli, and they had no idea what it was. They usually the question was, "You mean you're not from Melilli?" I go, "No, I'm not."
How far was Melilli from Patti?
I would say 2 hours on the highway.
Oh, that's a long way.
Well, it's a big island. Sicily is a big island. It's the biggest in the Mediterranean. We're proud to say. And therefore, never been to Melilli. I've seen the road sign on a highway. It's a little bit in the interior of the island, and therefore the touristic, let's say, routes go towards the shoreline instead. So that's why I didn't really happen to go to Melilli. But I'm planning to go one of these days. I know that the population there is a mixture of American and Italians living in this town, where you have a combination, hybrid, I would say it's a word that people use nowadays, with Italian and American culture.
Italy, in this
in
town.
In Melilli, right.
And then you have sort of the converse here, right? A little bit of that culture.
Right.
In the middle of Middletown. Right,
because many people from Middletown, from Connecticut, from New England, once they retire, for example, they may go back to Melilli. But with them, they don't bring only their wife, for example, but also bring the cultural aspects that they learned in here, namely, for example, Thanksgiving.
Oh, of course. Of course.
So that's an interesting
And Thanksgiving and Halloween, probably. Do you have Halloween in it?
Yeah, actually, we start having it.
Yeah.
We start having it.
I was even in China and also in France. I was there during the Halloween season, and they're starting to adopt. I mean, it's a way, I suppose, to sell greeting cards and certain kinds of foods and push the change of seasons and all of that. But a lot, at least in France, homes don't all have ovens. Certainly not in China either. Are there ovens in homes in Italy?
Yeah, we have stoves, ovens.
But stoves, of course, but no, but the oven piece.
Like the brick oven?
No, well, I mean, no, just to roast a turkey, you need an oven.
Oh, that size, yeah. Well, some houses might, but generally speaking, I wouldn't say.
Right. So we had these wonderful friends in Cassis, which is just in the Mediterranean. It's a beautiful place, and there was a downtown bakery, which of course had ovens, and the service they offered at Thanksgiving was to roast turkeys for you. So you take your bird down there and get it.
Wow.
Roast it up and then bring it home to eat it.
Well, but speaking of this turkey, this bird, for many Europeans, it is still a foreign bird. The only ones to really embrace this bird, its tasty meats, is the fact that those who have been here before, and they bring back their experience of this turkey. But otherwise, if you were to go to any, as you may have experienced yourself, any European restaurant, I dare anyone finding anything with turkey. There's none.
It's actually one of the French words I remember from high school, though. It's le dindon, right?
Le dindon, right?
Yeah.
Right. But it still is a foreign bird.
A foreign bird. And on that note, you're a foreign bird, and we're all foreigners in this world, and we're also all natives, right? I'm going to have to close the program off for this week and ask you to come back sometime.
Anytime.
The next holiday that has an Italian connection. I'm
Right.
sure there are many. We'll have to think about that. Meanwhile, though, I want to say that this Middlesex Moments radio show is a wonderful opportunity for me to speak to the listening audience about our college. And I want to advise you all of a stunning new piece of information, which is that our URL, our World Wide Web address, is shortened now to the very simple www.mxcc.edu. We've removed the middle piece that we used to have, which I would always say at the end of the program. So now the news today is we are mxcc.edu, and I'm Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, wishing you a good day.